Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we're going to have a fun little discussion on a possibility. I do not think that the Switch 2 is coming out this year anymore. Once upon a time I did, but once all the reputable sites out there came out and reported that while there was a plan for holiday 2024, the console has been pushed back to early 2025, at the earliest. And so since all these reputable outlets out there have made this claim, that's now what I believe is happening. But similar to how these reputable outlets thought 2024 at one point and then had to change because information updated or were wrong, could it be that somehow they might be wrong again? Is it possible that by some stretch of the imagination or hope or willing it into existence that the Nintendo Switch 2 can come out in 2024? It's unlikely, but there might just be a little bit of hope. And this could just be the irrational optimism that I have as a hardcore Nintendo fan here. But it's something that I think is worth discussing, even if I don't expect it to happen. And so, that's what we're doing today, talking about the possibility of Switch 2, against all odds or reputable reports, somehow still releasing this year of 2024. But before going forward, let me point out that we are aiming for a goal of 40,000 subscribers, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So one reason why I think it's still worth considering that Switch 2 could come out this year, again, I do not think it will, but possibly, right? Is because, well, all the reports saying that it's coming out early 2025 are at the end of the day, technically, a rumor. We have not gotten any official word from Nintendo yet on what they are going to do. So, in reality, we do not know what's going to happen. We have ideas, and we may very well be right that early 2025 is the likely window, but it's not a foregone conclusion yet. But let's now talk about these reputable outlets. What outlets am I talking about here? I'm talking about Video Games Chronicle, I'm talking about Eurogamer, I'm talking about Bloomberg, I'm talking about Nikkei. These are all outlets, news outlets, that report on things not just within the gaming industry, but sometimes outside of it in the case of Bloomberg and Nikkei, and they have gotten things wrong in the past. I remember the Switch Pro debacle, for example. And then, of course, we have this recent situation how initially everyone was reporting sometime the second half of 2024, and now that's all changed. Now, I believe this is the case, not because they just had false information, but simply because plans change. And that happens all the time behind the scenes. So when you're reporting on something before it's officially confirmed, it is subject to change. So I don't think these outlets have bad information sometimes, I just think that information is always subject to change, and we should always take it with a grain of salt until it's officially confirmed, and that's pretty much it. But with this reasoning that I have, it would then lead one to think that yes, the reports are accurate, and they simply got updated information that Nintendo has since delayed the console internally, obviously not publicly because it hasn't been officially announced yet, to early 2025. Yes. But there's more to consider here. One, I still think there's room for misinterpretation of information. It's not necessarily that plans change, but when the story's being heard from someone behind the scenes, some things can be lost in translation or misinterpreted. So when we go back to the Bloomberg report on the Switch 2 delay, this is what they said. Nintendo is advising game publishers that its next generation console will be delayed until the early months of 2025. According to people with knowledge of the matter. So, here they're saying that Nintendo is advising game publishers. What if Nintendo is advising game publishers that they should focus on an early 2025 release, but that doesn't necessarily mean Nintendo themselves won't focus on a holiday 2024 release? What if we're looking at something like a soft launch for the Switch 2? Now, hear me out here. Again, for like the fourth time in this video, I do not expect this to happen. But, what if Nintendo wants to put out the console with a select few hand-chosen games that they've been working on for the holiday, and it reaches a select but small audience in certain regions. And what it allows them to do, one, it gets it out there and it starts the marketing, but also it's a good sample to work out some kinks and get things running well so they can be ready to fully expand the Switch 2 to a far larger audience in early 2025. What kind of kinks could I be referring to here? Well, the online infrastructure for the console, how things work by transferring over from Switch 1 to Switch 2 through the eShop, your digital downloads, your NSO accounts, your cloud saves, things of that nature, playing with each other online, having several different stress tests and making sure that the online servers for Switch 2 work well for whatever online offerings they have at launch. Maybe Metroid Prime 4 is a launch window title and it has a multiplayer mode, for example, or maybe Mario Kart. And also making sure that there isn't any significant widespread issues with the hardware itself, because oftentimes, day one consoles, not just with Nintendo but just across the board, have issues, and those issues need to be addressed. So if you're focusing on a smaller audience at first, maybe just a handful of million, it's a little bit more feasible to work out those kinks and get them addressed. Now, I mentioned a handful of million. Would that really qualify as a soft launch? I think there's some wiggle room here, and obviously I'm just talking about a possibility that I do not even think is going to happen. But I do think it's somewhat possible, and it does make some sense. But let's consider another little angle here, and this is going back to the idea that plans are subject to change before made official, and even when they are made official, we still hear about delays and things of that nature after the fact. But is it possible that instead of a delay, they can push up the release? And I think in theory, yes. Again, possible, not likely. When we think about how long Switch has been around, we are in the 8th year. And this kind of dawned on me the other day when we were talking about the end of Wii U and 3DS Online and comparing those generations to Switch. The Wii U generation specifically was less than 4.5 years long if you talk about from its initial launch day to the launch day of the Switch. And again, here we are with Switch 1 in its 8th year. It's likely going to reach past 8 years of support. This console nearly has double the lifespan of Wii U. And so what I'm getting at here is that Nintendo likely didn't expect things to go as well as they have with Switch, and they should have been preparing for their next generation a while back already. And based off the Nvidia leaks, it's likely the case that T239 has something to do with what the Switch 2 will be. And that was a couple years ago at this point. So the notion that Nintendo doesn't have their hardware ready for a holiday 2024 launch, I don't really think is the case. And based off all the reports, which a lot of that comes based off the manufacturing process, they would appear to support this idea. What most are suggesting is that Nintendo is delaying to early 2025 to get the lineup ready, to get sales in the right place, to avoid scalping, and so they're just trying to wait for the right time to maximize sales potential and hit the ground running with the best library possible. So in other words, it doesn't seem likely that the reason Switch 2 would come out in 2025 has to do with hardware, but other factors. And if it's about getting the software lineup ready, I think that offers a bit more flux here. Because remember how I talked about how, yeah, we've heard about delays, but how often do we hear about things being pushed up? It doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes. Here's an example. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was planned for a September 2022 release. But when did it come out? In July of 2022. They pushed it up a couple months. So is it conceivable that there might be a couple games that they've been sort of waiting on to see when they might be ready, and depending on when they're actually ready, that kind of impacts when Nintendo has their launch. Again, Nintendo hasn't officially announced when the console's coming out yet. So, through some strong hopium maximum thinking, I do think it is within the realm of possibility that Switch 2 could come out in the year 2024. Do I think it's likely? For like the 6th or 7th time in this video? No, I do not think it's likely. I do not expect this. But I think it's possible. And so that's why we talked about it today. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.